Premier, the reps from the Crowns today said that the government is basically taking away a right that they had originally given them when they didn't want them to strike, and now that that right has become inconvenient for the government, it's now taking that right away again. What would you say to that?
We've been very consistent. We've provided a 7% pay raise on this particular file, which has been accepted in years 5 and 6 across the public sector, in some cases years 7 and 8. It allows us to live within our means, and they want a 17% increase. That's a 10% difference between the two parties. An unelected arbitrator making that decision puts the province the ability of not being able to afford to pay. It's been historic. They don't take that into consideration. And the reality of it is, we have a wage settlement that is fair. We looked at other options, ensuring that we could bring new Crown attorneys up quicker to the pay scale. Looked at other things related to it, and they were stuck on 17%. And 17% across the entire public sector is adding, on top of that, an additional 10%, which is $500 million embedded in the pay scale across the public sector.
Okay, but we're not talking about the entire public sector here. In fact, we're talking about, relatively speaking, a handful of workers. And so that then leads us to wonder whether this is not so much about the Crown as it is your concern that if an arbitrator fines for the Crown, there's going to be a trickle-down effect to the entire public service.
So our negotiations with them when it comes to salaries are the same across the entire public sector. If you go back, actually, the Crowns took a different deal early on that was less than what we actually settled on. We went back and trued them up. We made them whole the first negotiation. This is about looking at the entire pay package. And then we looked at other articles. We looked at how quickly could we move young Crown attorneys through up the pay scale. But this is about ensuring that we treat all public sector workers fairly and in a pay scale that's affordable to the taxpayers. We are providing a 7% pay increase. A 7%. They want a 17%. There is a huge difference in that. They want to go to an arbitrator who doesn't take into account of the taxpayer's ability to pay. That arbitrator will deal just with those Crown attorneys. My job is the responsibility of all taxpayers.
But Premier, it was the government that gave them the right to go to that arbitrator in the first place.
I can't speak for former governments. What I can tell you is our sister province next door is providing the same collective agreement, essential service, and we're the highest paid in Atlantic Canada. How many times have I been standing in this scrum when you guys talked about getting doctors to the highest in Atlantic Canada? They are the highest in Atlantic Canada. We're providing them with a 7% pay increase. They want a 17% pay increase. The taxpayers of this province need to be able to afford to pay that bill. And that's my job, is not only to represent those Crown attorneys, all public sector workers, but to ensure that I respect and protect all taxpayers.
Premier, you're saying that this was a previous government, but the Crowns are saying that right to arbitration received a 30-year extension in the last collective agreement, the one where they took your wage pattern, that it was extended for 30 years, and now you're wiping away that extension at your first opportunity.
Well,
is that correct?
We're providing them with an opportunity, they have an option to go, if they don't agree with the package, there is an opportunity to take job action, labor action. It is the right to strike. We provided that in healthcare, but we need essential service component, and we provided that essential service component when it comes to Crown attorneys. What I have said, and consistently, that we're too far apart when it comes to sending this to an arbitrator. We can't, as a government who has been consistent in the last 6 years, that we've signed collective agreements and we've treated all workers in this province fairly with affordable pay wages that the taxpayers of this province could afford. And we can't afford an unelected third party to determine that is going to be now changed very rapidly and very differently with the taxpayers' ability to pay.
Will that right to strike be meaningful if it's found that most of their work is in fact essential and they basically have to continue working as they work?
Listen, the sister province next door has it. They still have the ability to take job action. There will be obviously a negotiation between the two units about what is actually essential and how to protect that. But that will get worked out, and then they'll be able to do that.
Premier, is it good faith bargaining to make a change like this in the midst of negotiations with no notice to the other party?
The bargaining unit was told we were not going to arbitration, that we would be going with the bargaining table. That was a conversation that happened, is my understanding. I'm not at that table. But this is a consistent decision on our government to be fair to workers. This is a 7% increase on the highest paid Crown attorneys in Atlantic Canada. This is a 7% increase. We provided an opportunity for new Crown attorneys to actually move through the pay scales quicker. They wanted a 17%. The taxpayers of this province can't afford that.
Are you concerned that this one's going to end up in court, as so many already have?
My job is to look after all taxpayers. My job is to ensure that the contracts that we have are affordable, that are fair to workers and fair to taxpayers. And sometimes those two things, at times people disagree with that, and I appreciate and respect their right to collective agreement as we negotiate with them. But I also have to have the right, as the Premier of this province, to protect the other 70% of taxpayers. You've watched in this House, people standing up asking me to make investment after investment. I've talked about affordable housing today. We've talked about poverty today. We've talked about low-income Nova Scotians today. Then I'm being told by opposition parties to stay in balance. One of them, I should say. How do we do that? If we decide that for every 1% is a $50 million embedded cost to the taxpayers of this province. I want to remind you, we have a 7% pay raise on the table. 7%. They want 17.
Was it
And last
purposeful?
question.
Was it purposeful to do this today, knowing that law amendments for this bill will fall on the day of the federal election, when, let's be honest, nobody's going to be paying attention to this place?
No, I don't know when law amendments will be. Law amendments, that'll determine on the opposition and when the bill gets moved through the House.
When will Hugh McKay be back in the House?
I don't know. As I said yesterday, he was in treatment, and I respect his privacy from there.
You mentioned consistency across the province. Is there any appetite to remove arbitration from other labor groups as well, not just Crown attorneys?
We've been having negotiations with other organizations. As you know, we're providing service legislation in healthcare. We remained them, gave them the right to strike. But we need to be able to get to the bargaining table and find a collective agreement that respects workers and at the same time respects all taxpayers. An unelected third-party arbitrator is not going to get to settle the difference between 7%, which is a fair agreement, and 10%, 17%, a 10% difference. That alone, if we stay consistent and treat all workers the same and fairly, could potentially, in turn, move this province in a very different direction when it comes to the stability that we've seen, the growth in our economy, the repatriation of young people, the new investments in job opportunities, the investments in low-income Nova Scotians, the investment in healthcare infrastructure. All of that is at risk if we let an unelected third party determine the difference between 7 and 10%. I would say to you and submit to you, many Nova Scotians would think a 7% pay raise over 4 years would be a fair deal, one that respects their right, but a 17%, realizing that 70% of our population is going to have to pay that bill without seeing that kind of a pay increase, I believe would be unacceptable to them, and the agreement we have on the table is fair to workers.
So it really is about the broader picture then, Premier?